Hello and welcome to Affordable Housing Matters. I'm Norman Robinson. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected our world in ways that we could never have imagined. With stay-at-home orders in place to help save lives and stop the spread of the virus, millions of Americans have lost jobs, were furloughed, and were otherwise not able to bring a steady income into their homes or apartments. On today's show, we will discuss how that financial strain has affected housing for citizens in our viewing area. We have a very informative show planned for you this evening, so don't go far.
Why should young people care about the spread of coronavirus? Well, we know that people with underlying medical conditions over the age of 60 are at highest risk, but they've got to get it from somebody.
So we're asking everyone to be selfless for others so that we can protect those who are most susceptible.
Not going to bars, not going to restaurants. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others.
For more information on how you can social distance, please go to coronavirus.gov.
Housing NOLA is a 10-year partnership between the community leaders and dozens of public, private, and nonprofit organizations, all working to solve New Orleans' affordable housing crisis. Joining me now to discuss how COVID-19 is affecting housing in our area is Ms. Andreanecia Morris, who is Executive Director of Housing NOLA and President of the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance. Hi, Andreanecia.
Good morning. Good day, Norman. How you doing?
I'm okay for old people. It's good to see you. How's everything in this COVID-19 atmosphere that we're all dealing with?
So things are okay personally and professionally. We're a little frustrated at the way things are playing out. It's been quite distressing to see our leaders continue to fail to put housing first, continue to ignore the need for sustainable, affordable housing, particularly as they are calling for people to stay at home, to shelter at home, because that's the best thing that they can do right now. That's the safest option. And there's been very little discussion and no real substantive effort to make sure that everyone has a place to shelter at home, so that's safe and sustainable.
It's been a while since we've had you on the show, so for the benefit of our viewers, could you reacquaint them with exactly what Housing NOLA is?
Sure. So Housing NOLA was formed, this is our 5th anniversary year right now, actually. So we launched in 2014 to talk about the need to make sure that housing was affordable for all. What we mean by affordable is that you're not spending more than 30% of your gross income on your total housing costs, because that's not sustainable. That means you're living check to check. And we have such a severe problem. We have a significant number of people who are actually spending more than 50% of their gross income on their total housing costs. Here in New Orleans, this is also a problem, and Louisiana. So we pulled community, our leaders, public officials, everybody you can name together, and we said, what is the strategy? Can we solve this problem? We used data to do the analysis, and we were able to determine that we could solve this problem. New Orleans has all of the resources necessary to solve this problem. We could have solved this, could have been well on our way to solving this problem when COVID-19 hit. But unfortunately, we have not been very successful in the last few years at implementing that plan and meeting those benchmarks and hitting those goals. So when COVID-19 hit, we had a city where more than half the people who lived here were cost burdened, spending more than they could afford.
You mentioned in your opening statement that our leaders aren't doing anything substantive. What did you mean by that?
So we're seeing half measures. Again, the same broken system that needed radical changes, that needed dramatic action, is the system that they are relying on in order to solve this problem. So we're seeing small tweaks, a few pots of money here, a few pots of money there, and again, not this major connection. For example, we have rental assistance programs, which are great, right, that are coming from a variety of sources. The estimates tell us over 50,000 households just in New Orleans were cost burdened on March 1st, before COVID-19. So doing programs that will help 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 from a variety of sources is just not going to get it done. We've got, private funding coming in, public money coming in. Doing programs that help 5,000, 6,000 households isn't enough when the need is when the floor is 50,000. It's not substantive. It's not impactful. We've got moratoriums against eviction. We need to make sure that when those moratoriums end, that people are not saddled with 2, 3, 6 months of rent with no way to pay them. How are those folks going to dig themselves out of those holes? Mortgages, same thing. Deferring mortgages for 3 months and saying to a household that has had a reduction in their income or an elimination of their income that now you owe 3 months of your mortgage. And where's that money going to come from? So that's what we mean by when we say a lack of substantive, a lack of real effective relief.
Well, you mentioned earlier that we had the resources to solve the affordable housing problem or crisis prior to COVID-19. How about now? How about the resource availability right now?
They're still there. The resources are still there. We've got, for example, estimates tell us that there are about 7,300 vacant apartments in New Orleans that could be made available. That doesn't include short-term rentals. You add short-term rentals, which are not going to be doing the same kind of business they were doing before. You have 14,000 vacant apartments. So we have folks who are sitting in prison who can't be released because they don't have housing to go to. We have people who are still on the street. We have people who are doubled up. And we have to, why aren't we aligning those resources? It's a lack of will at this point. We talk about, and again, this is capital. We could have deployed funding to get people and get homeless and housing insecure people into hotels. And if we spent enough money, the state and the city would be reimbursable up to 90% of the funds that they would have expended. That opportunity is not lost, but we've lost time. There are millions of dollars of resources that were on hand at the city and state level. Funds that were restricted, that hadn't been able to be used. There needed to be a full court press to get those resources deployed quickly. Our housing authority, for example, still has about over 1,000 people with vouchers who are trying to find apartments. We need to be making real matches. We asked the city to consider suspending income discrimination so that landlords couldn't refuse to rent to people who could pay during this time. We haven't seen that happen. And so and those things are still, those are still things that can be activated now, but we've basically lost out on 2 months where we could have stabilized a lot of people. We could have made sure that they were safe. And we also need to get some of this funding going, right? If landlords and property owners aren't getting rent, which we understand, they can't make insurance payments. We're about to head into hurricane season, and we're going to be looking at substantial cancellations because people aren't able to pay. Homeowners who aren't able to pay their premiums, and there's a moratorium against cancellation. What happens in June and July when you can't pay? Because according to the statistics, only about 51% of eligible adults are working across the country. Those numbers are even more extreme here in New Orleans and Louisiana, but that's not something that's going to change. Our tourism industry, our hospitality industry it's not going to be able to return to its pre-COVID strength immediately. It's just not. And again, you have workers. We've seen data that suggests that 38% of the essential workers, so the people who've been working this entire time, 38% of essential workers are extremely cost burdened, meaning they're spending more than half their income on their housing costs while they are risking their lives to make sure we have food, to make sure that we have medicine, to make sure that critical services remain available to us. Those people can't pay their bills.
Well, Andreanecia Morris, Executive Director of Housing NOLA, Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance. It's always informative having a conversation with you. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, we can get you back in the studio so you can be here live and share some of your energy with myself and the staff here at WLAE. So be well, take care of yourself, and you're welcome. Looking forward to seeing you in the not too distant future. Coming up,
Norman.
You're welcome. Coming up next, New Orleans City Council member introduced a new resolution urging the suspension of residential evictions. More affordable housing matters right after the break. New Orleans City Councilman Jared Brossette recently introduced a resolution urging the suspension of residential evictions as it aligns with the Federal CARES Act. And joining me right now to further explain his resolution, which, by the way, passed overwhelmingly, is Council Member Jared Brossette. How you doing today, Councilman?
Good morning. Look, taking it day by day, I'm doing well, safe and healthy, and thank you for having me, Norman, and WLAE. It's peculiar and some wild times we're in right now, but we are hoping everyone is safe and healthy, and continue to follow the officials' guidelines and recommendations, public health officials. We want everyone to be safe, and you cannot replace one's health system. And so I'm glad to be on your show.
Well, you're looking good, and you're looking fit and healthy. What are you doing? You're jogging, you're running. I see you lost a little weight there.
I did. I lost a good bit of weight during over the past months. Biking, I like to bike, and I need to do it more often. But mostly my days have been consumed with teleconferences, Zoom, interviews, and of course, doing the people's work with City Hall.
Yeah, that's our new normal. And congratulations on getting your resolution passed by the City Council. As I said at the outset, it passed overwhelmingly. What is this?
Thank you.
You're welcome. What is this resolution? Describe it to us, please.
So the resolution is relative to both tenants and landlords, and I want to make that point very clear. The resolution explains that the vast majority of eviction cases before First and Second City Court will likely be prohibited by the protections in the Federal CARES Act. Mm-hmm. That is the CARES Act that Congress has passed to assist with COVID-19 pandemic. I believe that just to back up, the CARES Act prohibits many landlords from charging late fees, issuing a notice to vacate, as well filing for eviction until July 25th. And the point of this resolution was to align the dates of when you could properly give notice. Mm-hmm. That was one of the big issues. Since landlords must provide the tenants with notice to vacate before filing an eviction, and the CARES Act requires the notice to vacate provide at least 30 days. Mm-hmm. The earliest an eviction can be filed in accordance with the Act is August 24th. And so that is, I'm asking that that CARES Act align with first in city court suspending evictions until then.
So what is the timeline for this particular resolution? Is it still a resolution, or since it passed, is it an ordinance? What's the timeline for it to go into effect?
This is not an ordinance that would become law. That is up to the legislature as well as the Supreme Court and state government. The resolution is a non-binding, we expressing our legislative intent in form of a request.
Okay, so since it doesn't, since it's sort of appears to me that it's something that you're asking landlords to do. It doesn't have any particular teeth in it that it doesn't have any leverage in the sense that you can demand that they do it. Is that correct?
Well, we cannot demand that they do it. This is we are urging and requesting the courts, the leadership of the courts, to assist and continue suspending the deadline. Right now, they're set to open on May 18th. And I don't want to. We don't want to have confusion in the courts about what is eligible as it relates to a mortgage holder and their particular properties.
Do you have any sense of how they, since it will be left up to the judiciary to extend this, do you have any sense right now how the judiciary feels about this?
I don't know how the judiciary feels. I do know that the housing advocates that brought this to my attention, I would say they both included renter advocates and real estate professionals and landlords. Both groups acknowledge that this is not just the best way forward to protect renters, but it's the best way to protect us all with aligning these dates. I believe from what I've heard from the housing advocates that we should hear something from the courts since May 18th is a little bit over a week away. We should hear something next week.
Since you mentioned housing advocates, that's a nice segue into the next question, is because we have next on the show the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. So is the city working with other organizations to come up with the best possible solutions to help renters?
Well, yeah, we actually received $10 million, not in conjunction with the COVID-19. We also received about $10 million for affordable housing from the state government. So that will definitely assist with our homeless population as well. And it's important that we continue to receive these resources, Norman, because our budget is taking a real financial burden, financial hit. We've about to go into hurricane season. We have expenses from COVID-19 that, of course, under the federal declaration as a disaster, we have a 75-25 split. And so all the departments are, the CAO have told us that they are making sure that they document all the expenses for future reimbursement. And at the beginning of your question, yeah, Fair Housing Action Center was the main agency who brought this to my attention, and I was glad to carry this for them and for the many people who are out there struggling to make ends meet, who are complying with the stay-at-home order. And as I said, this is about landlords too. They have expenses too. That's why in the resolution, we're also asking for assistance to help landlords through requesting the assistance from state and federal government to provide additional subsidies, if you would.
I'm glad you mentioned that because we can't forget about the landlords. They have expenses too, and this pandemic is affecting everybody. So I'm glad you're asking in this resolution that there is some assistance for landlords who have to meet their own financial obligations. Council Member Jarrett Brossette for the City of New Orleans, Council District D, thank you for visiting with us this morning via our teleconferences process. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in person in the not too distant future. So be well and stay safe.
Yeah, you too, Norman. Thank you for having me, and stay well and stay healthy. And we will get through this public health pandemic together. And we want all of our people to be safe.
All right, see you down the road.
See you soon.
Okay. Right after this break, we will visit with the Executive Director of the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. So please stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to Affordable Housing Matters. The Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center is a 25-year-old nonprofit organization that works across the state to end housing discrimination. Joining me now to discuss the impact COVID-19 has had on homeowners' rights during this crisis is Cashauna Hill. She is Executive Director of the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. Ms. Hill, good morning, good day to you. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
How's the family?
Everybody's doing well. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's always good to hear. And maybe one day, in the not too distant future, we can get you here in the studio with us.
For sure. I'd love to do that.
All right. We'd love to have you. As you know, Ms. Hill, we're seeing record unemployment. In fact, let me give you the numbers. The U.S. Employment rate has hit 14.7% in April, and that's the highest rate since the Great Depression, as 20.5 million jobs have vanished, and that means that with the jobs lost and incomes lost, people may not be able to make their April or May rent or their mortgage payment. So what kind of help or protections are available right now from your vantage point?
Well, these unemployment numbers and the loss of jobs and income is really one of our top concerns right now. We're all supposed to be staying home in order to slow the spread of the virus, but people need to have a home and to be able to keep their home in order to stay there. So to that end, evictions and foreclosures are suspended statewide until May 18th because the courts are closed. So it's very important that people across the state understand that any attempt to evict anyone is currently illegal. We are unfortunately still seeing some landlords posting notices to vacate the premises or threatening evictions, but people should know that even if they receive a notice like that, they should absolutely stay in their home.
Well, we saw some incidents on television where people who were renting rooms in hotels were forcibly evicted, and some of them were left to sleep in their cars or find accommodations with family or friends. What legal recourse do they have?
What we know is that, as you mentioned, unfortunately, there are some landlords that are really taking advantage of the closure of the courts, and so they are illegally evicting people, doing things like changing the locks, cutting off the utilities. So folks in that situation should absolutely seek the assistance of an attorney. Southeast Louisiana Legal Services is providing free legal representation to people who are in that situation where they have been illegally evicted. And they've established a COVID-19 hotline where people can call for services. And that number is 1-844-244-7644. 7871. We also want homeowners to know that if they're being threatened with foreclosure or a lender isn't working with the homeowner on a modification, they can contact the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. Our homeownership protection director is available to help, and he can be reached at 504-596-2100.
Okay, so you've given us two important numbers that we didn't know about before. Could you read those numbers out to us again so our producer could get those maybe and put them on the screen at some point, or just have them just have them at our access so that, you know, in case viewers call, we can pass those numbers on to them.
Thank you. The Southeast Louisiana Legal Services COVID-19 hotline phone number is 1-844-244-7871. And the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center's Homeownership Protection Program's phone number is 504-596-2100.
We had Councilman Jared Brosette from Council District D of the New Orleans Council on prior to having you for an interview, and he talked about the resolution that passed overwhelmingly that would extend the eviction prohibitions to August. Is that something that your organization worked with him to effect?
Absolutely, and we are very appreciative of the City Council's leadership in supporting that resolution, because we know that there are additional protections against eviction and foreclosure that are included in the federal stimulus bill. Mm-hmm. And so we're hoping that the state Supreme Court really does the right thing and closes the eviction courts across the state to line up with the protections that are in the federal bill.
Oh, you mentioned the federal protection bill. How about whether those stimulus checks? Is there anything in that that particular bill, along with the stimulus checks, that offers any other protections?
Absolutely. So for renters who are living in government subsidized housing, the federal stimulus bill extends the eviction moratorium until July 25th. It also prohibits late fees and requires at least 30 days notice before a landlord can evict someone after that moratorium is lifted. So in effect, what the federal bill does is it makes all evictions in government subsidized housing illegal until late August 24th, actually. And so landlords who have a mortgage that is owned or secured by a federal agency like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or the Federal Housing Administration are all going to be subject to that eviction moratorium that's included in the federal bill. So even though Louisiana's moratorium could possibly end in May, if you are a landlord who has a federally backed mortgage, then you can't evict any tenants living in those properties until August 24th.
So at least a substantial number of renters are protected, even if the court should decide that they're not going to follow the resolution that was passed by the New Orleans City Council. That a substantial portion of renters will be protected under the federal CARE Act.
Yes, there will be a portion of renters who will be protected under that federal bill and who will have a longer time before a landlord could possibly evict them. The idea, though, would be to have some uniformity. And so we're hopeful that the state Supreme Court will really take the opportunity here to align the state's procedures and protections with what's in the federal bill. I'd also like to say that we know that the resources, the federal eviction moratorium and the stimulus checks, those are a great start. But those things are not in and of themselves enough to cover expenses for many people, and even for those of whom, will be made whole by the eviction moratorium or the stimulus checks. We know that they've already missed rent payments, and that when the courts finally do open back up, there's really nothing at this time to prevent a wave of evictions for the past late rent or for workers who still haven't caught up.
So what should renters be prepared to do those people who are, you know, they're at the mercy of their landlord. So what should they be preparing themselves for now going forward?
The Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center and advocates really all over the country are pushing for more assistance from Congress to protect renters and homeowners. And so people should certainly feel free to reach out to their elected representatives and ask for those additional protections and for that additional assistance. But in the interim, for people who may not feel comfortable reaching out to elected officials or who frankly just don't have the time because they're focused on, you know, their day-to-day needs, we've created at the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center some resources for people to use when negotiating with their landlords and to try and figure out how they can help themselves at this time. So people should feel free to visit our website at lafairhousing.org.
Thank you very much. Cashauna Hill with the Louisiana Fair Housing Association. It was so informative having you as a guest, and we definitely will have to have you back. So be well and stay safe, and hope to see you in person in the not too distant future. Take care. You're welcome. We would like again to thank all of our guests for joining us today on Affordable Housing Matters, and we hope that you found this show informative and resourceful, and we urge anyone facing problems with housing discrimination to contact the sources that our guests have provided. So stay safe, stay home, and please stay vigilant during this difficult time. We will all pull through this together, my friends. Thank you again for watching. I'm Norman Robinson, and we will see you next time on Affordable Housing Matters.